Oh, shit. Andrea, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you, Julian, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is awesome. I think that the topic of leadership is something that is really relevant no matter who you are. Like you're always going to have some sense of leadership in whatever it is that you do in some capacity.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I think before we like dive into it, you want to just start off by introducing yourself, what you do, and everything.
Yes, my name is Andrea Jordan, and I have a business called the AJ Standard. It's a business and leadership coaching company. Work with entrepreneurs, small businesses, and mid-sized businesses, people in entertainment and in sports in those areas. In addition to that, I do hold a senior general manager position for a lifestyle brand company. We focus on health, fitness, and wellness, and I'm in the management and operations division. So we work with a lot of private buildings in New York City. We deal with some of the elites of New York on a daily basis, and it's a lot of work doing what I do in that position as well.
Wow. Yeah. And I like so leadership is something that's you're all in on all the time. Like what how would you define leadership? Like what does leadership mean to you?
Leadership is passion. That's how I define it. Is just simplify it. You really have to be passionate in what you do, and it will show. And no matter what is it that you're doing as a leader, um, it's going to it's going to reflect. It's going to reflect on you and how you perform, and that will transition also reflected into the people that you hire to help you lead. So it's so many different areas of leadership. It's not just one thing. And I think the biggest thing is sacrifice that leaders have to make that other people don't experience on the front line. You know, you're always expected to, no matter what situation you're in, you're the leader, you're responsible for everything. I mean, in my senior GM role, I experience that every single day. Like I have staff I have to worry about every single day. I have to do scheduling, I have to do budgets. If it's something minor that happens on the facility, and the first thing they're going to say, where is the manager? You know, where's the Andrea? And I'm not even there, but I got to deal with it, you know? So these are the things that leaders have to make. This is the sacrifices. You're on vacation, but you actually might get a call that's
Right.
work related, you know? And that's on all sectors. That's not just because I'm a senior GM, but that's just if you have your own business, you're still responsible for what goes on in that business, even while you're on vacation. So, you know, those are some areas definitely with leadership that
No, yeah. And I think that's the thing that we probably take for granted and don't think about when we aren't in those roles. The buck stops with you no matter what it is. Like there isn't gonna be the person that you can then hand it off to. You
right.
deal with it no matter what.
Yep, that is true.
And starting a business like on your own and like from the ground up, that takes a lot of work. It's you're creating a culture from the from the bottom up and really instilling the mechanism of how people will look at this thing that you're creating and how invigorated the people who you'll be hiring will be for whatever it is that you're trying to pursue.
Right.
How do you think that the pandemic has kind of changed leadership and like maybe even like poked holes in places where there were, things that could be done better?
Right. The pandemic, I think, has I've actually had this conversation through the entire pandemic. And I think what it's done, it's really exposed leadership, exposed it to where a lot of times I think some leaders, depending on the industry they're in, it's kind of easy to hide a little bit when you have other people in place to delegate the work to be done and they're responsible. Like if you're a CEO, you have, you know, your vice president, and then it goes down into directors or regional managers, all depending on the industry you're in. But in this case with the pandemic, because so many people has lives has changed because their personal lives has changed, not just professional life. People lost family members during the pandemic. I know I did. I lost a couple of family members due to the pandemic. So a lot of the employees are now looking for the leaders of the company to just say, "Hey, how you doing?" just really being more empathetic towards what's happening. And that's why I said that it's exposed leaders, because now it really has shown how leaders are not so personable to a certain extent. Some leaders are forced to figure things out and they don't know what to do. And they're too prideful to say, hey, I don't know how to handle this situation. I've been fortunate enough to have a really great relationship with the CEO of the company I'm with. And, he's reached out to me to ask me a few things as far as, you know, communication, what's going on with the company, what ideas do I have. And I've been very open and honest with him, let him know, like, listen, you got to reach out. You got to reach out, like phone call your senior leaders, like not just me, but you have 20 other general managers in the company. Call everyone individually and just say, hey, how you doing? It doesn't have to be always business, just really show that you're human, that you care at some point. So I think that's how the pandemic has definitely impacted leadership, and just trying to figure out the best way to communicate with people, because everybody's working from home and you're not really seeing people as much. So it's like, how do you navigate with that? And it's been challenging on everybody. It's been challenging for CEOs, people in those leadership positions, and then for the employees, it's been challenging as well. So everybody's just really trying to figure out what to do, how to do it. I think some people are making it a little more complex than it has to be. It's really just getting everybody ideas together and coming up with a solution together. Like, we can't do this by ourselves. No one can do it by themselves. Like, we have to do it together.
Right. And do you think that the like addressing the point that you made in regards to the CEOs like really having to be more personable and really making sure that they're having that interaction that's not necessarily even related to the actual job, but more so like on a deeper level of the person. Do you think that the absence of that was more or less just the way in which our society works, where the prioritization is the profit at the to the detriment of, you know, concerning yourself with the people? Or do you think it's just that they were just busy?
Yes, I mean, be have first. Let me just say, a CEO's position is extremely busy. Like, it doesn't matter, and it's tough. And a lot of people don't understand really the intricacies that come with that on a daily, what they have to deal with a daily basis. I tip my hats off to so many CEOs that's running these really big corporations, because when you look at small businesses and mid-sized businesses as they grow, you're like, they go through their problems, and you're like, just imagine having a company, you have 10,000 people under your wing, and you literally have to trust other people to run your company, and you're overseeing everybody, and it's a lot on one person to take that responsibility. So for me, I kind of side with the CEOs in certain things. With They say, well, I can't do this, like you just said. I can't physically do this because it's not practical for what I need to do for the company as a whole. It's so many people. How do you navigate? I've told people, even as a CEO, when you have those larger companies, even if it's just a video, like, personalize the video and just send it out to all your employees. If you have 10,000 or whatever the case may be, just send a video. Say, hey, how you doing? A friend of mine, she's in Paris, and her and I speak, once a month. And I was excited to hear from her that her vice president of her company, it's about 5,000 plus people, called her directly during
Wow.
the pandemic to say, hey, how you doing? And I was like, this is exactly what I've been saying to people, like, this what needs to be done. And she just thought that was the most amazing thing that could have been, she said if she had any issues with the job, like, that moment, it just went away, just because of that reason. And it just, it's hard, but it can be done. I think at some point we have to stop making excuses for certain things and figure a way out. And profit, yes, profit is key. You want to make money, but for sustainability, to last longer, for longevity, you gotta consider your people first. It's
Right.
proven. It's
Well,
proven.
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and at the end of the day, like you want to make it so that it's not a revolving door. Like you want to make it so that people feel welcomed and that they're, appreciated so that you get that longevity from people. Like it's inevitable that people are gonna make career moves and everything, but you don't want it to like be to the point where it's people are lasting like 6, 7 months and going out the door. Like I think at that point you have to kind of reevaluate everything. And with that being said, one thing I've noticed to an extent, I feel like one of the things also that happened during the pandemic, I feel like a lot of people started to really reassess their careers.
Mhm.
And I think that the time at home and being isolated really made people reevaluate just everything.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, the one, and again, I said, if during this pandemic, if you do not come out with something that you have developed during this time, I'm a little concerned because it's not necessarily, oh, you have to create your own business, but just as an individual, being a better person, and being better at what you do professionally. A lot of people created business during the pandemic and became very successful, which is great. But it's definitely give time to self reflect, and that's big in anything. And me constantly, I'm always self-reflecting all the time, just if I go through something, what can I have done to maybe make the situation better? I'm always strategizing. It's just something I do. It's very important. I'm highly invested in myself to make myself better, because if I don't do that, then how can I be better for someone else? How can I be better for the employees that I hire? How can I be better for the clients that I have? So it's very important. And I think having those conversations with people, especially during this time, like what are you actually doing to make yourself a better person, to really develop yourself? Read books, just enhance something, learn a new skill, learn something, like just do something different, challenge yourself. Don't be scared, because it's going to show once this is all over. This is not going to last forever. So once it's all over, people are going to know what have you been doing for the last year, some changes. Besides saying, no, I've been working from home. Okay, we get that, but what else have you been doing? So yeah, that's where we're at.
No, yeah. During this pandemic, I started a podcast,
Right.
and I actually, to your point on reading, I've really made it a priority to read at least like two to three books a month now.
Yes.
Um,
What book have you read so far this month?
I read the book Heaven and Hell, which was really interesting. Just like this breakdown of just the history of monotheism and the notion of hell and everything.
Nice.
I'm reading this book called I think it's called The Power of the Myth or something of the Myth. It's this this man by the name of Joseph Campbell. One of my guests talked about him. He basically highlights how like myths basically are the same story being told
Mhm.
over and over again, and just the history behind it. I found that really fascinating, and I love the *Sapiens* books. So I read the second version of that, the *Homo Deus*, which I find fascinating. I just find examining humanity and just
Mhm.
how the species functions to be
Mhm.
very fascinating.
Right.
One thing that you said that I want to dig into a little bit more. So, like you were saying, how during this pandemic, like well, once this pandemic is over, like it's going to be really like uh discussing what did you do like during this time frame. What do you think makes you so motivated and makes you so proactive? Like, what is it that like really pushes you in that direction?
I am, I guess, because I feel I found my purpose and what is it that I need to do, and I am determined to fulfill that. And helping people is just a passion of mine. But just to be more specific, it's really helping people execute. One of the challenges that I've seen for so many people, even with what I do with the AJ Standard, and this is why I've extended it with small businesses and mid-sized businesses, because I started this whole thing out just wanted to help athletes and entertainers. With my background in sports and working as a consultant with sports executive, I was able to help some athletes on the development side as they transition through their career. So just having that experience, and then people coming to me and saying, hey, I have this business, and me being a business major, graduating my business degree, and love just everything about business, because I am a true believer of nothing happens in this world without business and leadership, period. I can debate anybody on that, and it's still going to go back to that, regardless of what. So if you really break anything down, it still comes to business and leadership, and that's it in all forms. But it's just me really fulfilling what I want to do, what makes me happy, and that's what really keeps me motivated. Is just seeing that there's people that needs help, they don't know what to do. There's some are scared to ask, and I'm naturally like, okay, I see there's a problem, I can help with that. If you want the help. I've actually had to learn over the years not to offer, because sometimes it's like you offer, but the person, they have to really want the help, because the work that goes into it, that's what people are not prepared for, especially
Right.
when it comes to building a business. Everybody, oh, I want to have my own business, I want to have my own business. I'm like, this is great, but when you got to do the work, are you willing to do the work? And then when they realize the work it takes to have your own business, they're like, oh, yeah, this is a lot. Yeah. Just imagine what the CEOs are going through with the big companies. Like, we go back to those CEOs, like, just imagine what they're going through. So it's easier said than done until you actually have to do it. And then you're like, oh, it's easy to judge someone on what they should do until you actually have to do what they're doing. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, not that easy. Never that easy. So
Right.
again, what keeps me motivated is just my passion, honestly. My passion for what I do, my love for just engaging and building relationships with people. And that's what motivates me, honestly. That's it.
While you were talking, one thing that you said that it made me think of actually another book that I just finished reading, the War on Normal People by Andrew Yang, which is a pretty good book. I enjoyed it, and I think one of the things that he spoke about, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because like the whole book basically is about automation and AI, and how basically we're about to reach a particular
Hmm.
point in machine learning where a lot of jobs will be lost, a lot of well-paying jobs to low educated people will be lost, and we need to kind of figure out a way to mitigate this wave of unemployment that is going to be hitting our country via low skilled workers. And one thing that he speaks about in the book that I found fascinating, and while you're speaking made me think of, was how millennials right now, just the the mixture of everything that's occurring right now, you see that the amount of people our age that are starting businesses, it's at an all-time low. And some of the reasons why it's at an all-time low is because first and foremost, student debt, like the rate in which people are in debt right now is at such an all-time high that it's to the detriment of innovation and risk, because everyone basically has no, like, either has no room or does not want to like take on that risk, because starting a business is risky. Like, what are some things you think that we could do societally to maybe mitigate that and really invigorate and really, I guess, push people who have great ideas and who are motivated to take that step?
Okay, so it sounds like two questions there. We have an automation question, right?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Automation. So I'll go to their second question and then come back to automation. So,
Okay.
like, what people can do as far as risk, taking that step to like build their own business and taking that risk. Just honestly educate yourself. Educate yourself first, and be confident. Be confident and okay with failing. You have to be okay with failing, or okay with being uncomfortable, and learn that nothing's perfect, because we still have people to this day, they live in a perfect world, everything needs to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect, it's never going to be perfect, it can't be perfect, because if it's perfect, how are you going to learn? How do you measure something that's perfect already? Right? How do you measure that? You can't measure that. So the whole point of everything that we do is to still measure what is it that we do to see if it works, or if it's not working. If it's not working, we get back to the drawing board. This is how we continue to stay innovative. So just take the lead. Take the lead. As far as those who, like you talked about the debt, that's a serious thing. A lot of people are in debt. Education, financial intelligence. A lot of people are still not financially intelligent, and it's because of the lack of education. That we have. I laugh because I look at like my grandma in their era, where they got paid, you know, $4 or $5 an hour. And for some weird reason, with the little bit of money that they got paid, they were able to save. They had a crazy saving method that they were able to save and end up buying homes for themselves and living their life. Meanwhile, we have more money we're getting paid and all the resources that they didn't have, but yet we suffer more debt than they did. Something's wrong there. Something's happening there. Like, it's a weird thing.
I personally think the reason for that is I think that societally, back then there was more of a mentality to put away your money and wait till you have the means to purchase something
Right.
versus I feel like we live in an era where credit is really big
Yeah.
and the notion of just getting something immediately
Right.
versus saving up and getting it with your own money has kind of deteriorated. And I think that a lot of people have gotten used to the notion of, just credit, 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 like put it on
Yeah.
your credit card, put it in your credit
Mhm.
card,
Mhm.
without the hindsight of understanding, that you're gonna have to pay that back and you should probably pace yourself. And,
Right.
I'm not saying using a credit card is bad, but you know, everything in moderation.
Yeah, I mean, in the United States of America, they don't make it easy. It's like you can have the funds, but you still need the credit no matter what. So they force us literally to have credit cards. And at the age of what, like 17, 18, you get your mail for your first credit card. You don't know what to do. And you're just like, what? I have money? If you're not working, you don't have money? Like,
Yeah.
let me spend it. I think we all been through that. I remember when I started and I went to college, I literally got a credit card in the mail. I was like, wait, I have a credit card? Like, and I worked. I always had a job. I always worked at a very young age. So it's like, okay. And you start using your credit card because the money is there and everything is approved, approved, approved. And then you don't think about it at the age of 17, 18, like, oh, I got to pay this money back. And then not only do I have to pay it back, but if my credit limit is 1,000 and I max that out, what you don't realize is the interest is going to hit it too. So that's what you're not prepared for because once again, the education of having financial literacy, we don't. It's not for some of us are not privy to the information. It depends on the family upbringing. If family dynamics, if your family's financially intelligent, then more than likely you're going to grow up with that. If your family is not, then you're less likely to grow up with that, and it's something that you have to learn on your own through trial and error. So it's a lot to it, and it's tough because we still suffer from it. I think a lot of business owners too, they suffer from it. They just don't want to say it. This is why some businesses are going under as well.
Right. And I think going back to the topic of athletes and helping them throughout the longevity of their career and post career, you
Mhm.
know, I'm assuming you probably know this better than myself and the people listening, but like a lot of times I feel like athletes have a very low financial literacy and make choices that are detrimental to themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely topics that I've been a part of, and it's many reasons for that. Again, if your family is not financially intelligent, how does that trickle down to you? Most athletes are coming from urban backgrounds, which low income. And if they're struggling, it doesn't matter what part of the United States they're from, they're just coming from the struggle. Even internationally, if you're a great athlete, more than likely, I hate to say it, you come from a low income background. And that area you grew up with, it doesn't success, the fact that you even got out the area is a success in itself. And now you sit here and you give a young person that's in their 20s millions of dollars. What do you think the first thing they're going to do is spend the money? They don't even care about what saving. I've never seen this money in my life. You're telling me to save it now? No, I need to spend it because there's things that I've been wishing for the last 10 years that I couldn't get that I want now. And I have the money, I'm going to spend it. And that's just the reality of it. So it's more so understanding them and where they come from and why they do what they do. And then have as they progress and get older and mature to say, listen, you still have to save because this is not something that's going to last forever. It's a blessing that you're even here. You're one out of thousands of people that even have this opportunity to become a professional athlete. So now that you're here, you need to capitalize on that. And here's how you can make more money. You can save what you have and make more money through endorsement deals and so forth and all that different things. So it's a tough journey. You know, even for them it's tough because they make it and they also have to deal with a lot of personal things on the back end with family members and friends thinking that, oh yeah, you made it to the big league, so I made it. I've heard that philosophy all the time. One person makes it out the hood, let's just say, and it's like, yeah, he made it, we all made it. I'm like, how is that possible? How all y'all made it? Like, I'm confused. Like, I'm trying to figure that out. I'm like, listen, just because you know you were there, maybe playing a sport with him or whatever, like it's just a support. And then you put in one person now, you put all this burden on one person to feel like they have to pay you now because you were there with them and you were supportive of them. And it's tough because, you know, what do you do? What do you tell a person who grew up with someone and the friend feels like now the person is a professional athlete that they now have to pay them? And they're
Right.
like, I feel like I shouldn't have to do this. But if I say no, then all of a sudden I get looked at differently. So it's a tough position. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And like, uh, I don't know if familiar you are with baseball, but like, there's this baseball player who just got on the San Diego Padres. I think his name is Manny Machado. Uh, no, or is it? It's not. I forget the guy's name, but he's like a really really phenomenal shortstop, and he just got one of the biggest contracts
Mm-hmm.
in the history of baseball. Like it's like $340 million. He's like
Yeah.
20 something years old,
Hmm.
and apparently when he first started, because I think he's from like Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
he he none of the money was really guaranteed when he started. He
Hmm.
was getting paid like maybe, like 500, 600,000. And I guess like he really needed the money. So like he basically went to this financial establishment that's known to be a bit on the shady end.
Mm.
And basically they gave him money up front with the pretense that basically if he ends up making it big in the majors, they get a cut of his first big contract. Like they got like I think like 5-6% or something. So it's like they gave him, let's say like let's say like they gave him like 800 grand,
Right.
and now they're gonna get like like 20 million or
I mean,
something.
yeah.
And it's insane. And I think, from his vantage point, he was just like, look, I'm just gonna live with the consequences. Like I was young, I needed the money, I don't regret it. But like a lot of play athletes have actually sued them for their kind of malpractice, quote unquote, of
Yeah.
taking advantage
Taking
of these.
advantage. Yeah, and it's a real thing actually across all sports. I think we've heard basketball players going through it, bad deals, football players as well going through it, bad deals. It happens a lot, and that's the tough part for athletes because you don't know who to trust, and you go through it every single day. And anytime they go through a financial advisor or someone to handle their finances, it's really through recommendation because they don't know. And although they go into the league like the NBA, the NFL, when they go in as a rookie, they have a list of people who are certified accountants or financial advisors that's affiliated with the NFL, but the NFL or the NBA, they're not going to take responsibility for anything that happens with you in that company. They just say, hey, these are recommended people that we know, and you don't have to use them, but if you choose to use them, it's pretty much at your own risk. So it's one of those risk things, like you take a gamble in anything. Life is a gamble, right?
Right.
You just take a gamble, and you want to go in optimistic, but I tell people I'm gonna be positive and optimistic, but I'm also a realist, and things are gonna happen.
Right.
Things are gonna happen. The chances are, if I make this deal with this person, they may, do something backdoor, and I may suffer the consequences. But you know what? It's on me if I want to make that decision. And that's just a risk you have to take. It's tough, but again, we have to really take time and learn our finances, learn how things work. Don't dump it on your accountant. Like, oh, my accountant does my taxes. Like, understand what you have to do with your taxes. Don't just dump it on your accountant and ask questions. And surprisingly, people don't ask questions. They're so trusting in people. And I get it. If this person's the professional, this is what they do. They've been doing it for 30 years, 40 years. I trust them. I get it. But you still ask questions. If you don't know, Ask questions. Hey, how do you do this? Why do I have to pay this much percentage in taxes? Where's that coming from? Ask questions, and whoever's the person that you're paying to help you, they should be able to answer every single one of your questions without an issue. If
Right.
they have an issue answering your questions, then need to find someone else.
Right.
That's just what it is.
No, yeah. Like talking about this makes me think of also like Scottie Pippen, who
Right,
it's insane. Like
right.
I remember during the pandemic, like watching The Last Dance, like
Mhm.
I just couldn't believe that like one of the best
Yep,
players in the history of basketball
mhm.
was getting lowballed the way
Yep,
that he was. Like not even making millions of dollars, like
nope,
hundreds of thousands of dollars,
nope.
while you are like Michael Jordan's right hand guy. Like it's insane.
He was literally the second best player in the NBA,
Yeah, and
other
make
than Michael Jordan. Yeah.
yeah, and like there were like hundreds of guys making so much more than him,
Mhm.
and the Bulls were like, and like at the end of the day, it's business, right? The Bulls were like,
Right.
sign the contract,
Mhm.
got to live with it.
Right. And this is like the behind. See, we would have never known this if the Last Dance thing come out, right? So, but this is a lot. And even though Scotty went through that, guess what? Things like that still happens today. And this, but see, now we're in a different generation of people because you have social media. You have a lot of people that's a little more expressive in their emotions and what's going on. So now, we look at athletes or just somebody in general, athletes or entertainers, and we judge them because they may become emotional about a situation, but they can't share the situation in depth with the public. But behind closed doors, it's like, yeah, but they're experiencing what Scotty just experienced.
Yeah,
So it's hard for you to now perform in front of people when how am I getting paid this when this person gets paid that, and I'm supposed to just perform every day. Like I'm supposed to just bring my 1,000% game every day. Like this is what you want me to do. And it's like, oh well, yeah, remain professional. Of course, yes, I'm good. I need to remain professional, but it doesn't motivate me at some point, right? It does, and this is what I talk about getting personable, and we got to be careful how we judge people until we really know the facts and the true story of what happens. Because I think even though Scotty went through what he went through, watching the Bulls, being actually a Chicago Bulls fan growing up as a young girl, Scotty handled himself very well. you know,
yeah,
Scotty could have handled himself a lot differently. I think if Scotty was in today's era, then we probably would have got like a James Harden kind of thing happening. Like
yeah.
James
Just sit
Harden,
down.
yeah, just
I'm
sit
not
down.
playing.
I'm not playing. Exactly. I'm not playing. Like until you pay me, I'm not gonna play, and I'm just gonna sit here. Yeah, I'm injured. My leg's broken. Can't, like kind of situation. So it's just a different era. So I mean, I tip my hats off to Scottie Pippen. I think I respect him more now than I ever did. The fact that he played through all of that, still with everything he had to deal with, and it's just not motivated. And technically, he was still struggling as the
Yeah,
second best player in the NBA behind Michael Jordan. He's getting paid and still was struggling, and it was a tough thing to see. But I'm happy they shared it with the world.
yeah. It's insane, and it all goes back to like what Chris Rock said in one of his stand-ups. He's like,
Favorite comedian, by
like
the way.
rich. He's like, I ain't talking about rich. I'm talking about wealth. He's like, Shaq is rich. The white guy who signs his check
It's
is
wealthy.
wealthy.
That's true. It's a different conversation. Like when you talk about rich and wealthy, the conversation is completely different. Um, even the thought process of a rich person and a wealthy person is completely different. Just from my experience, I would say it just seems that there's quite a few rich people that the entitlement is it's insane. Like because I am who I am, you're supposed like there's a respect. The respect level is very low. Wealthy people don't really worry about small things because they're like, I have so many things to worry about. I don't care about that. And I've literally witnessed that. And it's a different conversation. They actually are willing to sit down with you and listen to you and actually become a little more personable with you, like, oh, what's going on? Okay, I like this perspective. And they have conversations. Doesn't necessarily happen like that with a few rich people. And I've had some experiences. So it's a interesting experience between the two. And it's sad, but it's a reality.
Right. Like going back to that bit for a second. I love when he's like, He's like, if Bill Gates woke up with Oprah's money, he'd kill himself.
I don't know. He can't go back. He just can't go back. No,
Uh,
there's no way. There's
never.
no way. You just can't. You can't. There's no way you can go back. But yeah.
But yeah, now I want to talk about small businesses because
Okay.
I feel like small businesses have absolutely been like impacted the most during this pandemic. Like I think that major corporations, they've had to maybe trim the fat a bit
Mhm.
from like their employees to like mitigate the loss of revenue and everything. But for the most part, the majority have stayed afloat outside of the industries that were already in a downward spiral.
Mhm.
Uh, what are your thoughts in regards to just I guess the challenges that businesses are currently facing and the things that they can do maybe from a leadership standpoint or however to mitigate that.
Yeah. So it it depends on the business itself. It's from what I've seen and worked through. If you have a business that you're selling wine, liquor, you've actually done really great through the pandemic. So for some weird reason, wine and liquor has been evolving through the entire pandemic. People have definitely been buying a lot more wine, and they've been, alcohol and so forth. Other businesses like restaurant businesses, New York. I know a lot of places, but especially New York. It's a big restaurant hub here, and it's tough because they had to close down. I've even spoken to a guy. He had a shoe repair business for over 30 something years, and he said unfortunately he's going to have to shut down too. The landlords are not budging with rent, even through the pandemic. A lot of landlords are still expecting people to pay full rent, and it's insane. So it's so many different things that plays into that. I know it's been a topic, a huge topic that's been discussed during debates. Last presidential debate, they discussed that too. Um, I think what needs to happen is that, again, goes back to finances. The owners of these businesses need to look at how they're really spending. Um, Believe it or not, you have small business owners. They're going into business and they want to live this like luxury life that they're kind of like counting their eggs before it hatch. And you just scale back, and then they complain about, oh well, they want to raise the minimum wage and yada yada. Being in New York, I mean, even $15 an hour is not enough, but it's better than what we're getting paid before if for an employee. So when you want employees to come, you want them to perform. How your employees perform is how your business is going to run. If your employees perform well, your business is going to be well. If your employees doesn't perform well, your business is not going to run well. And a lot of small business owners, they still don't understand what needs to happen. Leadership, again, back to that leadership role. What needs to happen? The sacrifices you will have to make. You can't want to live a certain lifestyle and then say, hey, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. It really boils down to what exactly are you doing? And when I've worked with one or two people in small businesses, and you look at their overhead. Okay, where's this money going to? Where's that money going to? Well, what's your salary that you're taking out versus this? And when you look at some of their salaries, you're like, okay, do you really need this salary? Like, is this the salary you really need? Because if this is what you need to focus on, you need to grow your business, you need to put money in this. Maybe you need to cut back about $5,000 off your salary. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that because of a lifestyle that they created for themselves or whatever image they created for themselves. And I get that, but it's just the reality of it. So some hard conversations you have to have with small business owners on what needs to happen. What they can do is really make that sacrifice, take care of your employees, educate yourself, and also support and educate your employees. I think developing your employees is good, giving them some sort of incentive to make them want to go to the job. I know it's tough. It is tough because you're a small business, you're trying to figure things out, you're taking out loans here and there to pay for your business, but you can do things to still keep it going. It's been proven that employees will stay with companies. They don't leave necessarily for the money. It's more so the aspect of the actual culture of the company. What culture are you building? We talk about culture with bigger companies, but we also need to talk about it with small businesses too. what's the culture that you want to create in your small business, because that's going to keep your employees there no matter what the situation is. Your employees will go through those rough patches with you if they feel respected, if they feel appreciated. What they see you trying, they will try with you. They will stay and try with you, and you all can figure it out. You have to let your employees know that you're in the rut with them. You're dealing with this with them. Not that, oh, we're struggling, but you pull up in a brand new like Mercedes Benz, like, oh, we're struggling, I can't pay you this. And then you and your family go on vacation for 2 weeks to some other country, and they're like, how are we struggling, but you're able to do all this stuff? And this is what employees look at. This is the chatter they'll have amongst themselves. We're struggling, but he or she comes in here with $3,000 bags or whatever the case may be. It's just these conversations employees will have that they're not going to have with the owners. And this is why you have the struggles that happens with small businesses. But there's so many different things to it. But I think what they can do is really cut back. Just cut back on what you need to cut back on. Try not to make it the employee aspect. Yes, realistically, you may have to cut back on 1 or 2 staffing. I get that. But then either way, take care of your employees first. Like, just take care of them first and figure some other things out afterwards. How can you keep your employees and still keep other things? And you want to profit, I get it, but you might have to break even for a year or two until you get back on your feet.
So it sounds like you would be more so in favor of raising the minimum wage.
I think so, yeah. Of course. And one thing I would say, I say that because, again, I used to live in South Carolina, and I'm from New York. So how you live in South Carolina is different from New York. Raising the minimum wage like $15 in every state is not warranted at all. Like, every state living is different. I think that's what I definitely agreed with. I know President Biden and former President Trump had a debate, and they talked about the wage increase. And I actually agreed with Trump when he said that you can't raise minimum wage in every single state to like one rate, because every state is different. You have to raise it based off the state levy. And I do agree with that concept, because it's tough in New York. Like I said, $15 is still not enough in New York an hour, but it's something better than that. I know Jersey minimum wage rate is $12, I believe, in New Jersey. As of 2021, it's $12, so it's different. But in areas in South Carolina, federal is $7.25. That's the federal minimum wage. And I agree, raise the rate to 15. California is another place, like, it's similar to New York. Like, you can't expect people to live off of that when the average rent is like 2,000, 2,100 for a studio.
Right.
Like, you
Right.
can't do like $15 if somebody's working 40 hours a week, or for $15 an hour. They still can't pay their rent. And that's just rent. We're not talking about electricity, cable, phone bill, food. Like, how are people supposed to survive off of that? And that's just the reality of it. So I am in favor of raising the rate. I know people may, but I feel like we'll figure it out. We figured it out before. Historically, we figured things out, right? They've raised it before. And if this was the same conversation historically that happened when they wanted to raise the minimum wage, I think, to like 12. And what happened? We figured it out and we bounced back. So we'll figure it out.
So yeah, and I appreciate that you called out that, like, Trump made a good point, because I feel like, because we're so divided today, like, if like someone's not on, like, within like the spectrum of your political affiliation, you're not allowed to say anything. Like that person can't say anything, right? Like, that person is like the devil. It's like, I don't know. We're in very interesting times. But yeah, I agree.
Raise the rate. I mean, I'm, like I said, I'm a people first person, and when it comes to business, I'm all about the employees first. I practice this even in my senior GM role. I think my staff. I just had a leadership meeting with some of my fellow leaders, and I co-facilitate the leadership development program within the company I work with. And I talked about just the fact that I don't have a high turnover rate with employees. My employees stay with me. I have employees that's been with me for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. They've been with me. And overall, I haven't had any employee that I had to terminate in the last 3 years.
Wow,
I've not
that's
terminated. I have not terminated one employee in the last 3 years. Employees either actually left, or they left because of their own accord, but it's if it's relocation purposes or some job that they wanted to do. But either way, within the last 3 years, I don't think I've had one termination.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So you
So
can.
I do want to discuss automation and
Mhm.
AI. How do you think that automation and AI is going to really change the perception of leadership and just the structure of businesses? Because I think kind of dissecting what we were discussing earlier, for instance, where you were saying that one of the recipes to a successful business is establishing that foundation of your employees and taking care of your employees.
Mhm.
But if automation and AI becomes more prevalent, uh, it might get to a point where your employees are no longer human beings. So,
Yeah.
taking that into account, and I
Mhm.
guess the fact that human error is something that's always looked at and accounted for. Once we have automation and AI, how do you think that's going to change things for certain businesses?
It will change it because now it will. I don't think it will change it too much. It's just that we have to adjust. We have to adjust to the changes because even with automation or AI, the need for human contact will never go away. It doesn't matter. I don't care what they come up with or what they say. We like talking to each other. We like seeing each other. I mean, even on the phone when we call customer service, right? We get the computer. They're like, oh, press one, press two. Most of us are pressing zero. We're like zero. We want to speak to someone if we have an issue, especially when you have a problem. You don't want to speak to a robot. You want to speak to a person. So either what you still need people to run this thing. Automation, data is great, but you still need someone to read the data and present it and explain it. You still need people to do that. With leadership in that aspect of how they're going to do that, it's really about training and how you train people to adjust with the new things that's happening with automation. But it's still something that I'm still learning about to see how it's going to play out. And I'm in my own head that I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, how is this going to work? But just even with what I do in a senior GM role, the company I'm with, it's always something new happening. What do we do? And the people still want to talk to people. I mean, they're coming up with all these new things, but they still want to talk to people.
I'm gonna push back on you on that a little bit because while I agree with you, and I personally feel the same way,
Mhm.
I think similar to what we were talking about earlier in regards to for instance, your family and your grandmother, your mother, your great grandmother, and how they were able to save money with such little and everything, and how we're in a place where we have way more, but we're not able to do what they did. I
Mhm.
think that's a means of conditioning. I think that's similar to that where people were conditioned to feel more comfortable with credit and things like that. I feel that people will also be conditioned to feel more comfortable with artificial intelligence and interacting with AI. And I think that, another thing that I like to take into account is that as the technology becomes more and more refined, it may get to the point where you don't even realize that you're talking to an artificial being when
Oh
you
yeah,
are.
absolutely, absolutely. That's true. I think we're there now, though. I think in some cases they have it set up where certain things that we're experiencing, like it's like natural. Like we talk to Siri. If you have, if you're Apple, we're talking to Siri like, "Hey Siri." Sometimes Siri don't get it, and we get upset with Siri. But we're talking with Siri. It's just what it is. Like this, and I don't mind that. Like in that aspect, yes, I do agree with you. It's a good thing, but it's still training people. I think this should train the leadership training methods of how they have their employees now interact with what's this new technology, what's happening. It's the only change that I see that's going to occur. That's it. But again, we're going to adjust.
Well, okay, I'm gonna push back one more time
Okay. Okay.
because I think that when you're looking at more high skilled jobs where
Mhm.
you need that human interaction with the AI to interpret and to compartmentalize it, I agree. But I think when it comes to those businesses and those jobs where the employees are doing things that are a bit more low skilled, where it's very easy to automate and get a machine to do it versus a person, like for instance truck driving, where a human being gets tired and they may not be able to go as many routes, or the insurance that you'd have to put for
Right.
for the person may be a bit more expensive because the room for error for a human being is
Right.
significantly higher than for a artificial being. Like,
Right.
what about those things? Because like I feel like those things are going to be automated.
Again, it's definitely a area of not my expertise that I am still learning. But I think that's more so like your area of expertise, isn't it? Like you're in marketing or you
I
do all that.
and it's to an extent, yes.
Yeah,
Um,
right. So yeah, it's a. I listen. For me personally, whatever is happening. I'm with all of it. Like, okay, you want to bring me a robot that's supposed to serve me my food? Let's see how this is gonna play out. Like, like like let's see how this is gonna play out. Like, hey, McDonald's, they have self serve. Like, I'm not a big McDonald's eater, but I know a lot of places they have the fast food. They change everything now, so they actually decrease the the front desk person, like when you go up to McDonald's and you order your food, now you don't have to do it. Just put everything in this little prompt that they have, and then you go up and you even pay for it there, and then the person just serve you your food. So now instead of when I grew up, McDonald's, you had probably what 8 people in the front register. Now it's like 2 people. Literally, it's like 2 people at the front register at McDonald's serving your food because you just ordered your food on this big computerized screen that has everything in there. So it is what it is. But I know they talked about like robots eventually, like people working next to robots. Hey, let's see. Robot, if the robot can type up emails and call up people and see how they, so be it. It is what it is. Yes, it's gonna take away, it's gonna take away from staffing, but again, I don't know. We just have to see how that's gonna go, how that's gonna play out. We'll see.
right. I just hope I think and like the Andrew Yang book like kind of addresses this, but like I think the thing that I hope for is that um the people who are in government right now are thinking about this and taking this into account because when technology is accelerating at the rate in which it is now, it's gonna just it's gonna change the way that we live, and you have to plan ahead and really have uh some sort of mechanism put into place to mitigate how it's going to impact such a large portion of the population
Yeah.
you know um but like to that note, what are some things that you think with like all the things that are accelerating in our society and everything, what are some things that small businesses can do to really stay competitive and make sure that they can still get some skin in the game?
Keep engaged, stay engaged with your customers. Just stay engaged with your customers. And that's just not, oh my, customers come in and purchase a item or get service. Like really engage with the customers, get feedback from your customers, not just a email of a blog. Find out, follow up if you can, have someone who's in charge of contacting customers if it's on a monthly basis just to see how things are going, like actually calling or sending out an email to get feedback. That's important. And stay engaged, just stay engaged, stay engaged. I know a lot of people are putting more money into marketing now for their businesses and getting that out. It's just huge. Instagram, Twitter, all those different platforms you have, YouTube. Just stay engaged. Stay engaged with educate them. Educate them. Really let your customers know why their money is important to you. How their money is working for you. Sometimes you probably have to let your customer in on some of the things you're doing internally. I think that's a great way of building that relationship. If your customers know, like, hey, I'm, our staff is getting some type of professional development course to enhance your experience. This is great. This would be great. I would love to know that. Like, what exactly are you doing within your team, within your organization to help make the experience better? Like, it's good to know. So just stay engaged. That's it.
No, yeah, I agree. And thinking of like some local places that I love, like there's this really good pasta place in Brooklyn
Cool.
that just it's out of this world. Like like this, she started it in her apartment during the pandemic, and like now she has her own store. And like I like that the Instagram is very interactive and like very personal, and like I think that they do a good job of really telling the story, and it does make you somewhat invested
Mm-hmm.
in their business and makes you want to consume their product more because you have that interaction. And one thing I will say, to push back against myself from what we were talking about earlier in regards to like, interaction of people on the phone and everything. I'll admit there are times where when I call a business and like I'm talking to a person, it does make me feel better, and it does also make me want to get things from them more when you
Right.
have a good interaction where the person's friendly. Like for instance, there's even this place, it's not like local, but like I order things. I don't know if you ever heard of Zingerman's. That's a phenomenal business. That is the guy who started that business, genius. But like they're like just they have a really amazing culture, and it's like when you're on the phone with them, they're like super friendly,
Yeah.
and like it's like just a nice conversation. And it's like I called the other day and I was just gonna get a ham for Easter from them because they have amazing ham. Had
Mhm.
such a great conversation with the person. I'm looking through the catalog. I ended up getting the ham. I got some brownies.
More
They had
stuff.
some nice mustard that I was like, that sounds good.
Right.
I got like 8 things and I was only gonna get that one because I had that interaction with him versus just ordering it online or something.
Yeah.
So
See, yeah.
so
It's
yeah.
good. We want that. We want that emotional intelligence. We want that IQ to be really high in emotional intelligence. So it's important. I mean, like I said, I'm not opposed to the robot serving me food, but I just want to see how this is going to play out.
Right,
you know,
right. Yeah. We'll
like
see.
we'll see how this is going to play out because I know they've already done studies and they've brought it to a bunch of scientists has brought it to platforms and created this robot who can speak everything that feel I guess feel what you're feeling. It's like okay, this is interesting. Let's see how this plays out in the real world when people are pissed off.
Right,
And
right.
like that's my thing. What you gonna do when people are pissed off and they're like, I don't want you. I need somebody that's me now. Like give me somebody that's me. Like I want to see what that's gonna play out to me. So
That's a very good point. That's an
because because here's the thing: when you have a robot and somebody's upset, you're probably gonna have people if they're at a level of you can't control their how upset they are. They'll probably be okay with hitting the robot, but they won't be as okay with hitting the person. So these just like some people, they can't control themselves and their emotions really get the best of them. It's like I'm pissed off. I don't want to speak to you. Get out my face and probably because this happens to human beings. Just imagine there's human beings that has experienced people like physically attacking them in the workplace. So just imagine you bring a robot to someone now and they're upset. They're like, oh, I really don't even want to deal with you right now. Like, come on. Like, you're the last person I want to even talk to at this point.
Oh my
So
god.
it's gonna be interesting. We'll see.
That's a very, very fair point. Onto a completely different topic. With National Women's Month about to end.
Yeah.
Um, wanted to get your thoughts in regards to like female leadership and the lack of it. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think it is like it is that way, and what are some things that can be done to mitigate that?
Yeah. I think honestly, culture plays a huge part of it, depending on what side of the world you're on. But I think overall, collectively, that's what it is. You have some people just, in their culture wise, women are not, that's not what you do. It's just what it is. Like your leadership is in the home with the kids. That's it. Cooking dinner. And that is still leadership. That's a form of leadership, but it's just not on the business level where you're making decisions that will impact hundreds or thousands of people like these it's just not that I think some countries has evolved over the years with that and incorporating women female leadership which has been great but it happens for many reasons and it's just a lack of communication a lack of knowledge women they have definitely have not made it easy for us to obtain these positions and if we do acquire these positions more than likely it's in a state of where the company is probably in a really bad place. So you give us this position to make it better, but we don't have the proper tools and resources and support to actually resolve any of the problems. So we kind of set up for failure to a little bit. I think an example of that would be like Theresa May, what she went through with Brexit. I said, I was like, man, that lady, I feel so bad for her because I already knew what it was. Again, as a female leader, I knew what that was. I'm like, you're not giving this woman any success for any room for success. Like it's literally just setting her up for failure. So, what we can do about that, I think, is just really trusting that women are knowing that women are able and capable of handling anything problematic and taking on strenuous situations. Also, another issue, just aside from culture, is women having families. When we do decide that we want to start a family, have kids, that's about a year and a half stretch. And I say that because if you're 9 months having a baby, then you take some time off of work. So let's just say 2 years overall, you may not be actually working. Some men may think, oh, she's women and their hormones and their emotions and all that different stuff. But we all have hormones and emotions. It's not just women; men have it too. Um,
Right.
yeah, we all have it. So all of that, comes into play. We just haven't been given those opportunities, unfortunately. Just historically, our roles mainly have been just in the home, raising the kids, and just taking care of that. So now times has changed, and you see a lot more of us now, running the show. I wish it was more of us with more of us, meaning it usually when now you see a female leader, she's like the only one. Like on the executive. I'm like, where's the other female too to support the company and also to support her? Because that's another issue too. It's always one. It's never like two at the same, in the same level of leadership. So it's tough. And companies just need to start trusting us, preparing us too. I think that starts from the home. For me, I would say, even for me, leadership wise, I've had uncles who were very open to like, hey, you want to fix cars? Great, come to the shop, fix cars. They didn't even care. They didn't look at it like, oh, you're a girl. Like they was like, no, you want to fix cars, fix cars. I was like, okay, I'm getting up in the morning with my uncle at 5 o'clock, going to his shop and helping him fix cars. It was an all day process, like all day till midnight at a young age. I'm talking about like this is 11 years old. I'm doing this. So I think that prepped me for a lot of the tough work, let's just say, because it helped out because he was tough. He was tough. He didn't let up on me. He's like, all right, you want to learn, you want to learn. He didn't treat me any different. It was never you're a girl, girls don't do that. It was never that
Right.
situation. So I think the more we as young, the more we empower young girls to know like you can do certain things as well, like you can make these tough decisions, you can take on these leadership roles, then they grow up to be young women who understand that to women to say, yeah, I can take this on, I can take the pressure on. Because there's so many that's definitely ready and willing to do it, but they just don't get these opportunities because they're always overlooked because of that reason. She's a woman. That's it.
Right. No, yeah. And I think one thing also that I feel like is very prevalent in our society and in others, there's always this double standard where, you know, um with male leaders, like there's this acceptance of, maybe being a bit more aggressive, being, loud and all these other things. But like if a woman does that, it's problematic. It's
Mm-hmm.
looked at
Mm-hmm.
as like, oh, she's not a good team player, like all
Mm-hmm.
of these biases
Yep.
within the genders. And
Yep.
like, do you think that that's something that's being addressed and that is improving?
It's definitely not being addressed, so therefore it's not improving because it's
Right.
literally it's not being addressed. I mean, women, we don't talk about it amongst ourselves. Like women, other women will talk about it, but as far as us having this dialogue with men, it's not a conversation that happens, and that's the dialogue that needs to happen. That I don't think, from my knowledge, I don't think anybody has taken the reins on that to say, let's get some male leaders in a room with some female leaders in a room and have these conversations on why this doesn't happen, because it needs to happen. Men have a different perspective of women and women have this one perspective of men, right? Like you just said, we experience it. If a male is loud, aggressive, all these different things, yeah, he's a great leader, that's what I'm talking about, he gets the team together, let me come in there and do that. Let me come in there and do the same thing. Oh, she's a B. She's tough. I'm everything negative under the sun. I've done nothing different than what he did, but he got every positive remark possible. Meanwhile, I got every negative remark possible. Why? Because the perception that society has painted on what a woman should be, how a woman should act, how a woman should conduct herself. That's why. And for us as women, I can't speak for all women, but I will just speak from experience. I think, and just from having conversations with other female leaders, I think the pressure for us is on when we are put in these leadership positions that we feel that we do have to be that way to be respected, because that's another thing. It's really about respect, like people listening to you. But overall, I tell people, just be yourself. Don't go in there if you know leading with aggression and all that is not your thing. Don't do that. And it may work for some, it's not going to work for all. Like, you just really have to know what you're good at, what's your strength and what's your weaknesses.
Right. Authenticity is super
Oh yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Like, because like that's the thing. Like people, you can tell, you can pick up on it, you can
Mhm.
detect if someone's not being authentic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that I remember I went to this like seminar a long time ago that was like talking about like women in the workplace and leadership and all these other things. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. I remember one of the ladies was saying that I guess statistically, when it comes to interviewing, one of the things that has been found between men and women is that a man will generally uh brag about things that they're not very good at and kind of oversell themselves,
Mhm.
and that women to their own detriment will be a bit more pragmatic with like their evaluation of themselves on things, and it'll be to the point where like they'll be like, I'm decent in this, I'm all right in this,
Yeah.
because they're being a bit more forthcoming, versus the man where it's like he doesn't really know that much about it, he's like, I'm the best at this, I've done this all the
Right.
time, blah blah blah. And that
Yeah.
that it's like no one's saying the lie, but that there definitely needs to be this adoption of really being a bit more confident and like selling yourself a bit more in the workplace to an extent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, men will oversell themselves, and women, we will undersell ourselves. And again, we're more than capable. We doubt ourselves because if some of us, I guess, we feel if we speak about our success and the things we're able to do, then we come off. I think we're so used to the negative responses that we get when we are assertive, that we just say, we're not going to say this because then we don't want to come off like it's all about us with this ego, this huge ego, whatever. Because men, like, they're known for having their ego and pride, usually in the leadership positions. But when women do it, it's like, oh no, she needs to remain subtle. She needs to remain quiet. But I do agree with the statistics. The lady said, I will agree with that statistics that women, we don't talk about ourselves much. And even for me, I would just go on a limb and said, for me, even going through the ranks, I had to learn that about myself, because I would have things that I've accomplished that was great and that I knew were literally a lot better than someone else, or I was more qualified and capable of a male or whoever else, and I wouldn't say anything. And then people look at me like, well, why did you say that or they find out, they're like, I didn't know you did this. Like, I didn't know you did. I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, why didn't you say anything? And I was told, like, hey, you gotta boost yourself up a little more. Like, just boost yourself up, because you can do this stuff. Like, you've done it and you've done it successfully. So I had to learn that as well many years ago about myself. Like, yeah, why am I not saying that? Because I was like, oh, I'll play the reserve role and I'm gonna do this. But now I'm like, oh no, that's me. I can do that. Like, you put me in a room with, what's up? We got it going on. Like, what's going on? Like, oh, I can do that too. So it happens. It does. And I just think we just have to instill more confidence in women when we have these roles, and let women know they're supportive. And then usually, again, when women do acquire these leadership roles, who empower them really in these roles are men, right? It's the men really selected. It's not other women selecting us in the role. That's why I'm a big advocate of women empowering other women in leadership roles. If I'm the only woman in a leadership role, and I know there's an opportunity available to have somebody else in the seat, and it's me and 12 other people and everybody else is men, I need to get another woman in there. We got to get a different perspective, because I look at it like, if something happens to me, somebody else has to back it up. Somebody else has to back me up. We need to support each other because we understand what's happening here. And I think men at that point will have also a better understanding of just women as a whole. When you have one woman in a position of leadership, and it's a lot of men around her, you're only getting that one. female's perspective. So if she works a certain way, now you're going to expect every woman to work like her, and that's not how every female is going to work. Just like men, every man doesn't work the same. Every man is different. You do have the aggressive man, and you have the man that's more reserved, like, oh no, I'm just gonna I'm lay back and do my thing and just get it done, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
And that's just what it is. So we just have to empower each other. Men just have to be open to saying, like, listen, I want to learn. I want to learn. I want to know. And we want to support. And let's just not have you here. Let's get somebody else in here to also support you so you feel supported. And I think that's just really it. But other than that, with the lack of female leadership, definitely culture plays a role in that. Depending on the region you're in, we're still in the male dominant world. And we're slowly progressing though. We have progressed a lot over the years, and I'm excited to see it. But we'll see. But females, just be your own leader, become your own leader, make your own table, make your own executive team.
Oh yeah. In my career, I mostly manage women. I mostly hired women. I
Mhm.
feel like women generally are way more organized. Like in my experience, are like more coachable.
Mhm.
And like I've really like within like the people that I've managed really try to instill that, level of confidence in regards to just, knowing what you know and like really like putting forth that energy of confidence wherever you are, with whoever you are. And I've seen like a lot of success. Like a lot of people that I've managed, like were able to climb the ladders
Mhm.
super, super quick.
Yeah.
One person that comes to mind is someone that you actually know, Rothy. Shout out to
Yeah.
Rothy, one of my favorite
My
proteges
girl. Yeah.
ever. She is just a beast and a rock star.
Love her. Love her.
And I think that at the end of the day, like the potential is always there. Like regardless of who you're talking about, it's just really emboldening that individual and making sure that they know that they're valuable and that they have something to offer, and really tapping into that and making sure that they have that level of support that they need.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, is there like a female leader that comes to mind that you think just really is a badass and just emboldened, like embodies what a leader should be?
I think I believe Stacey Abrams. She's done a really great job. I mean, she's down in Georgia getting she has gotten people registered over what 800,000 people registered to vote in Georgia. Like she's a boots on the ground type of woman in a leadership position, and she's really an advocate and really been hitting hard on getting people to vote, educating people, not just like saying you need to vote, but just like educating them on reasons why voting is important. And I really respect that. And I'm a boots on the ground type of person too. I like to get in the grunt. I said my form of leadership is I like to get in the trenches with my soldiers. So I'm not the general who's going to lead from behind and say go. I'm like, no, give me my gun, let's go fight. Like I'm that type of leader. Like I'm with my soldiers. So I respect that. She's done a really great job, and I definitely tip my hats off to her.
Awesome. Is there anyone else?
I know there's a lady. She's the COO of Starbucks now, Rosalind. I believe that's her name. She's the first female and first Black female now, and she's the COO of Starbucks.
Wow.
She's done a great job. A lot of people don't even know about her, which is crazy, but she's done a really great job. I believe she was in Forbes as well as one of Forbes women leaders for 2020. I believe she's on that list, like 40 something, but she's done a really great job too. She came from Sam's Club. She was also executive of other companies. Done a great job just going up the ladder, doing her thing, and making it happen. She's done really great. So I'm excited for her. And I'm like, I drink Starbucks, so it's good to know.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Knowing that she's there, it tastes a little bit better.
right. I know, right? Like, oh, I got Stacy. You got Rosalind there, so that's good.
Oh man. AJ, this has been amazing. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming on the podcast. I
thank
think
you.
that what you do is incredible as a woman of color, and just like
Yes.
taking the leadership role that you have. My hat goes to my hat to you.
Thank you.
Before we end, do you want to like quickly talk about your website? To,
Yes. So my website will actually be launched next week, theajstandard.com. I have my Instagram is the AJ Standard and Twitter the AJ Standard. That's THEAJ Standard. And it's all about the standard. It's all about your standard. So yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, you're an athlete, you're an entertainer, small business, mid-sized business, definitely check me out. I'm able to consult with you and just help you achieve all your goals. And let's get it going. Let's rock and roll.
Sweet. And I'll be sure to include that in the link, and we can catch up after this. You can send me all
Yes.
the info and I'll add
Absolutely.
that in.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, AJ.
Thank you, Julian. It's been a pleasure.